Welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. And I have a wonderful show for you this afternoon. We are talking to Meico Whitlock, and he is the Mindful Techie. So Meico is the CEO and founder of Mindful Techie LLC, and we're going to welcome him to the show today. So Meico, welcome to the Ed Brown Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you are going to talk to us about being the Mindful Techie. So I want to start with your background, getting into technology, and then who is and what is the Mindful Techie?
All great questions. So just providing some background. So I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and I spent most of my life there. I went to undergraduate at Morehouse College and left there after Morehouse to go to University of Michigan for grad school. Wow. And that brought me to the Washington, D.C. area where I now reside. And I've been involved really in technology for all of my career, even before I had a formal career. From as early as middle school, I was taking apart computers and doing technical support for people in the community, and I ended up being self-taught with website design. And after college, I wanted to figure out a way to use that for social good. And so I found the nonprofit sector, ended up working in government in a variety of roles, from web development to software engineering to, in my previous roles as communications director, digital strategist. And one of the things that I realized over the course of all of that is that the way that we were interacting with technology and how it was impacting our lives was changing, right? We were becoming more and more connected, and I recognized that there were some benefits to that in terms of efficiencies and productivity, reaching more people, being able to provide more services, to reach more faster and quicker. But one of the challenges with that is that being constantly connected, people were also being overwhelmed, being stressed out, being burnt out, and that's part of the journey that I had. And that brought me to the work that I do today. And I in my last job working in this nonprofit space, I thoroughly enjoyed the work that I was doing. But I was like so many other folks that are enjoying the work that they're doing, but don't know how to shut it off, right?
Right.
And I reached a point where I was depressed, I was overweight, and really didn't have as much of a social life as I wanted to have. And I reached a pivotal turning point where I realized that I could literally drop dead from overworking, and that my friends and my family, hopefully they would say nice things about me at my memorial service, right? But that the emails would continue to roll in, that the projects would continue to stack up, and that the need would still be there, and I would simply be replaced at some point, right?
Absolutely.
And when I realized that there had to be a different way. And I've always been a spiritual person, and I grew up in a religious family, and so that's something that I've also sort of leaned on as I evolved. But I felt like as I moved into my career, that was something I had to check at the door as I moved into work. And when I had that realization about dropping dead from overwork, I realized that I could no longer create this artificial separation between my work and my personal, my spiritual development. So I began to bring that to work, and several years ago I actually talked about that in my journey with mindfulness in particular, and being able to manage the stresses of working in the sector, we're doing social good, and also managing all the technology pieces. And the response was overwhelming, and that led me to see that this could actually be something that I could do on a full-time basis. And so I eventually quit my job to do speaking and training and coaching in this area.
That is wonderful, going after your dream. And you've been, you were just telling me today about TV1, you've been interviewed on ABC, and you've done all of these different conferences. But I want to start with the basics. What is mindfulness?
Mindfulness is really about paying attention to where you are, right? It's about being present. And one of the more practical ways I can describe it is, when it comes to technology, we see lots of folks walking around texting, or people are eating dinner with someone, but they have their phone out, they're on the phone, they're texting, having a conversation. Well, being present means putting away the phone and actually having a conversation with the person in front of you, right? Being present means or being mindful means actually, looking at where you're going, you're crossing the street. So it sounds kind of silly, but those are basic things, right?
Right.
And it's an innate part of the human experience, right? It's not, I know that there's a lot that's been talked about recently in terms of mindfulness and how it's been defined, and more people are sort of becoming aware of, different forms of it. But it's always been with us. It doesn't belong to any group or any religious or spiritual tradition. Right. And it's about just taking that time to pause and to just be fully present on purpose with where you are.
Right, and it's interesting too. I was talking to someone about they're teaching their child how to be more mindful, no matter what you do. Like you said, there's a commercial where the couple, they're in bed and they're both like texting, and someone takes it away from them so that they can actually start to have a conversation. So how do we have mindfulness into tech? How do we make that a reality? Or how do we start to get ourselves to say, okay, I need to slow down. Like you said, you could just drop dead and it just keeps rolling and rolling. But how do we get to the say, okay, how do I turn off my phone to feel like I'm not missing anything? Like, how do I do that balanced work life? And that's a whole lot of questions rolled into one.
Well, I'll start with addressing the core of what it is people come to me for. People come to me for one of two reasons: either dealing with issues related to work-life balance or dealing with issues related to technology distraction. And people think that there are issues with the technology or with their work or with their schedule or with the time management, where really the underlying issue that we're all facing is a lack of intention, right? In terms of how we're approaching our day, how we're approaching our life. And so I say that we are suffering from an epidemic of what I describe as intention deficit disorder, right? So we're familiar with ADD or ADHD, but I think what we're suffering from is IDD. And the way this manifests is, particularly with the technology, is now people wake up first thing in the morning, they grab their phone, it's in the bed next to them or on the nightstand, right? They're looking at their email, checking the social media, responding to text messages, turning on the TV, watching the news, looking at the weather, doing all of that, right? Quick. Really quickly, right? And then they're rushing out the door, probably haven't eaten breakfast, and then they spend their entire workday battling those distractions while they're actually trying to get work done. They come home, they're exhausted. You haven't really done anything, but you're exhausted because your brain has been trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I combat these distractions, but also try to be productive and get meaningful work done at the same time? And that's a recipe for disaster. And so one of the things I offer to folks is I actually have a free assessment, just called a digital distraction quiz. Just a list of questions that ask people, are you, for example, do you find yourself frequently when you're in the bathroom, for example? Is your phone with you? When you're at dinner, are you on your phone or are you with your phone? Are you driving and are you on your phone? Simple questions like that, and it gives you a score to simply allow you to assess where you are. So the first step is really awareness. So there are assessments like the one that I offer, which essentially just allow you to see where you are and how technology is adding value or not to your life. And then once you're able to do that, the second thing that I work with people on when they come to me is getting at the core of the intention piece, which is what's your intention for how you're showing up, right? So going back to the example of starting your day, perhaps before you grab your phone, before you turn on the TV, before you interact with the external world, perhaps taking a few moments to just get quiet, to get still, and to think about, okay, well, what would make today successful for me?
Okay.
How can I show up and how can I be impactful in the world? What are the one or two most impactful things that I can do if I could do nothing else? And then using that as an anchor, using that as a guide as you go throughout your day. So when those distractions do pop up, you have something to go back to. One of the challenges with starting your day by just sort of diving into the technology, diving into what's happening in the outside world is you're essentially allowing the outside world to create your to-do list for you, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So you're diving into your email. That's just other people's to-do list for you. That's other people telling you what they need. And so you start your day off trying to get to inbox zero and respond to all these requests, and then you haven't gotten any of the important things for you actually done, right? And so we want to get to a place where we can get clear about what's important for us in terms of how we want to maximize our impact in our world, both personally and professionally. And use that as the anchor, use that as the framework that we use to figure out how we then manage our time, how we then manage our device usage, how we then manage the people and interactions that we have in our lives.
And that's, I mean, in the digital age, it seems like almost impossible. But like you're saying, if the first thing you do is to take a few minutes and just breathe, whether you just take 5 minutes or you do 30-minute, meditation, but just getting up and just sitting for a moment.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's so simple, but it's not always that way, because like you're saying, you look at your phone, you're like, okay, here I go. I gotta respond. So what are some of the things we can do to just say, okay, let me take a break before my day gets started? Because really, your day, you're kind of like backtracking on your day.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are some simple things people can do. So if you're one of the folks where your device is in your bedroom, like you have your tablet, you have your phone, and that's interfering with the quality of your sleep, that's interfering with the quality of your relationship with your spouse or your partner, then there are 2 simple things I can recommend right away. One is to turn off the notifications, right? So at least you're not getting notified of, new Instagram likes or new emails or new text messages that are coming in throughout the night, right? The second is if you really can't control yourself and you find that it's really getting in the place of you getting a good quality sleep, then I recommend that folks buy a real alarm clock and actually use that alarm clock and plug your phone up, plug your tablet up, and charge that in a different room, so that when you're forced to get up in a space where there isn't that automatic external stimulation, and you have a moment to sort of get your bearing before you begin to engage with your devices in the outside world.
And that's something that's so simple.
Yes.
And I'm like, when was the last time that I used like the old-fashioned alarm clock?
They still sell them. They still sell them, yes.
Wow, we still use those. So when it comes to work-life balance, and we'll just start talking about the job.
Yeah.
And in your job or on your job, there is a lot of stress to do A, B, Z, C, and do it like quickly.
Yeah.
So before we talk about work life, personally, how do we manage that at work? Because there are people that just, you're like, okay, I don't know if I can deal with you today. I think I need to take a minute and be mindful.
Yes.
But how do we do that in the workplace?
I think there are 2 things. So one, in terms of no matter where you are, and I know that there's a lot of talk about like follow your passion and follow your dreams, and you make lots of money off of that and yada yada yada. What I have found is I'm very fortunate to be able to do something that I love and to be able to make a living at that. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case for everyone, right?
Right.
Like you might not necessarily be in a place where you're making money from what you love to do. And what I tell people is that regardless of where you are, you can still make a decision, regardless of your level in your organization, whether you're a manager or whether you're the receptionist or the janitor, you can make a decision about how you're choosing to show up, right? Are you choosing to show up as kind and loving and compassionate? Are you choosing to show up as someone who's committed to the mission of the organization? Are you committed to helping the clients or the customers that you're serving? You can make a decision about that regardless of your work environment and where you work and whether or not it's your actual dream job. The second thing that I would say is when you are able to answer that question as you start your day, what would make my day successful? Or perhaps another way to think about it is, because it's not just about you, how can I be of service today? And you're able to answer that question. That then guides you in terms of your interactions and guides you in terms of how you're managing your time and how you're saying yes, how you're saying no when things pop up, right? Because you recognize, okay, what I said today was to be successful, I was going to outline this report for this funder that I have, and so I'm going to say yes and no to things that actually align with allowing me to do that, and I can say no, not right now to Susie. I can go to lunch with John tomorrow because today I've already decided that what's going to make me successful is to finish this report, and going to lunch or engaging in a conversation about another project that's not as time sensitive is actually going to throw me off track. So there are simple things that we can do even if we feel like we don't have complete autonomy over our work environment. Like you're not the manager, you're not the CEO, you're not the one setting the rules or the policies. regardless, you have an opportunity to decide within your little framework how you show up and how you're going to manage your own intention in terms of how you connect with folks and how you connect with the work.
So let's say you have someone that you're working with, and they don't know anything about mindfulness, they don't know anything about intention, and so you say, you know what, I can't do that project right now, or I can't, you know, we can talk tomorrow. And someone is insistent and they're saying, well, no, Meico, we have to do this right here, right now.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. So the first thing I would say is, when we talk about mindfulness and intention, I'm using specific words for a framework that I use to help clients that I work with. Okay. But the person doesn't have to be a practitioner of mindfulness. You don't have to explain to them what mindfulness is. You don't have to explain to them that you're practicing mindfulness. You don't have to explain to them that you set an intention and what your intention is. You don't have to explain that. You can tie it back to the mission, your collective mission as a team and as an organization. Well, you know, we are focused on, you know, meeting our, you know, fourth quarter goals. And one of the things I've been asked to do is to, you know, draft this report to make sure that we get continued funding for the program. And so in order for us to meet that goal, I'm not able to meet with you today, but I can meet with you tomorrow because this is more time sensitive, and this is going to help us out as a team, or is this going to further the mission of the organization? There are all sorts of ways that you can sort of help people sort of understand how the approach that you're proposing in terms of how you're managing your time, how you're managing your meetings is actually a benefit to the team and to the organization. So it's about making people to understand that it's not just about you, but it's also they benefit from the fact that you're able to carve out this particular time to work on this specific project right now.
And so you're really, I mean, you are a teacher and I don't know if I should call you a coach, but you are definitely a speaker, and just talking about mindfulness and technology, because just doing the two of those together, it's like, wow, I can be mindful and do tech at the same, at the same time. And when you started this journey, did you get a lot of resistance in trying to do it yourself, or with connecting with other people? Or was it like a smooth, you had the different challenges, but it just kind of like a smooth transition?
Yes, I wouldn't say that I've encountered a lot of resistance in terms of the type of support and the help that I'm offering. I think maybe one of the biggest challenges that I encounter is, you know, people are sort of in different places in terms of how they embrace, for example, you know, mindfulness, right? And so depending on the client or the organization, I can be more explicit, or sometimes it's sort of, you know, I have to use different analogies or different terms or different sort of ways to help people sort of get to the same place. So that's one of the challenges. I think the other thing is, you know, the time that we're living in and how people are interacting with technology. Some people think that, you know, there's some magical app that's gonna, you know, magically make everything better or fix their life, but there really isn't an app that does it. And I remind people about that there are apps and tools and strategies that I recommend, that I walk people through, that I do trainings on, that are certainly helpful, but there is no one app that can fix your life. So I work with folks on understanding that, and that there's no substitute for you taking the time to get still and to figure out what your intention is, to get clear about like your deeper why, about why you're here, how you're to be of service, you know, what are your priorities that you're going to be focused on at this moment in time. And when you check those things off, what's going to be next on the list? There isn't an app to help you to really do that for you. That there are apps that can support you along that journey, but you have to be willing to put in the work. And this isn't a short-term proposition. And so I know that there are lots of folks out there that write and talk about, oh, here's a technology hack, or here's a life hack to do this or to do that. That's not really what I do. This is about going deeper, because this is a lifelong change and transformation. So this is not something that's gonna magically sort of change your life, you know, in the course of a short conversation together. Like we have to actually, we have to do some work together.
And the thing is that there's an app for everything. I've downloaded 100 apps on just mindfulness or whatever is going on at the moment.
Yes.
You can just go and download. And you've talked about too being a mindful change agent.
Yes.
So what does that mean, and how do we do that?
So connecting it back to what I was talking about in terms of how we show up in the workplace. Oftentimes we think that in order to be a change agent, in order to do good in the world, that we have to have like a massive amount of money, that we have to be working for a particular type of organization, we have to have a particular role. But I often tell the story of my mother who works in retail, and she's worked in retail all of her life. And I don't know if you ask her that she would say that that's her dream job, right? But one of the things I admire about her is how she has committed to showing up, right? And she's committed to being 110% committed to her team, 110% committed to serving the customers. And so if she's deciding to show up, she's showing up 110%. And through that, she's been able to transform the team around her, been able to transform even how the management team interacts with her, and it reflects also in the continuous, glowing reviews she receives in terms of customer feedback. And so when it comes to this issue of how we make an impact in the world, you can make an impact by simply being present to how you actually show up. Right. Just making a commitment to being more kind, to being more compassionate, to just simply, smiling, for example. So I think that is one way that we can do that. The second thing I would say tied to that is, spending some time to really reflect on this question of your deeper why, your deeper life intention. So I talked about your daily intention, which is essentially asking yourself the question, like, how can I be of service today? How can I make today successful? But if you really sort of take some time to dig deeper and ask yourself, okay, for your life, like, why are you here? How can you be of service? And how can your life be something that's useful to the world, that's going to be long lasting? Like, what is your legacy going to be? I think if we want people to sort of think about those questions and to actually live in response to what the answers are, I think that's the biggest way that people can make an impact and to change the world. I think when we talk about freedom tied to this concept, I think the way that I describe freedom is understanding what your purpose is, understanding what your why is, and actually living that. And I think if we had more people to live that, then people would be changing the world in ways they hadn't imagined. Because it doesn't require a lot of money. It doesn't require you to work in a special type of organization. It doesn't require you to live in a special neighborhood or have a special type of role in the organization that you work in. You can do that right where you are.
And that's finding your why is so important. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure that out.
Yes.
What is my why? And how long is it going to take me to get to my why? How long is it going to take me to figure it out? And of course, that can take a lot of time. It can take a lifetime. So when we talk about living mindfulness in this tech-savvy digital world of ours, do we start to begin to live our best lives? Everyone wants to talk about living their best life.
Yeah.
And mindfulness helps us do that?
Yeah, so mindfulness is a way of being that definitely allows us to be more in tune with what's happening in the moment. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can be tapped into the joy of the present moment, right? Mm-hmm. One of the challenges with how sometimes we're connected to technology, how we're hyper-connected to technology, is that it takes us out of the present moment. And a lot of the suffering that we experience as part of the human condition is a matter of not living in the present moment, and we're sort of stuck in the past, right? Or we are looking at the future, something that hasn't happened yet, or we're not in our lane, but we're looking at someone else's lane. So we're looking at, oh, like so-and-so posted this. Oh, like they went on vacation, they got this job, they did this. And we're like, well, why can't I have that too? And it's like, well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's be present to what's happening in your life. Let's be present to how you have been called to service. Go pursue that thing, go do that thing, and then you are on the path to, actually in that moment, you're actually living your best life.
I love that. So in that moment when you're just saying, well, I want to do that, I want to be that, well, when is my best life going to start?
It can start right now.
It starts right now. And you can find these things to be really challenging. Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned before about someone teaching their child how to become more present, or now we have parents teaching their children, yoga. And so they are going to be the true change agents because they're starting so early. Do you think it's because they're open and receptive and?
Yeah, children are sponges, so children are naturally sort of come open and receptive. I think that as we grow, we're socialized to close down, and we spend our lifetimes, once we become aware of that, sort of undoing that or unlearning that. Right. And I think with children, you mentioned the yoga and some of the other techniques, I think all of those are great, but I just want to reiterate that none of that is new. So those are sort of more popularized techniques, particularly some of the forms of yoga that have been practiced today and meditation and so on. But when we talk about being present, you know, I remember being in school and we were taught like, okay, how you actually listen versus hearing someone, right? That's a form of mindfulness, right? Like we're having a conversation now, like you're listening to me, I'm listening to you, we're processing, and then we're responding. That's a form of mindfulness. That's a form of being present. So if we just had people practicing more of that, like you don't have to go to a special studio, you don't have to buy yoga pants, you know, to do that. Like you can practice that right now.
Right. And that's, I mean, in this digital age, that's what we're programmed to do. You know, I can buy it and it's gonna just help me because you go, okay, yeah, those yoga pants will help, and, you know, that music will help, and all of that. So it's, I mean, it's gonna be, it's just kind of challenging to just unplug all the time.
Yeah, so I think it's about finding the balance, right? So we're not talking about being a Luddite and, you know, going off in the woods and never talking to anyone again. We're talking about finding the balance between, if you're in a place where you find that technology is not adding as much value to your life as you would like it to, like it's getting in the way of you having great relationships, it's getting in the way of you being productive at work. What we're talking about is okay, here are some things you can do to take a step back, right? Here's some things you can do to perhaps get in better alignment. Perhaps there's something that you can do in terms of limiting when you're accessing email, for example. And if you overwork, for example, perhaps setting times where you say, you know what, between 8 and 6, that's the time I'm available. After that, I'm going to be spending time with my family, or I'm going to be with friends. And if it's an emergency, then here's how people can reach me. And being able to communicate that to your clients, to your colleagues, and being able to set those boundaries so you find the balance. So if there's something that does happen, you're reachable. You're not saying you're not reachable. You're not saying you're cutting yourself off. You're just saying you're trying to find a balance between being constantly on for work and also being available for your life outside of just your professional career.
And I'm just loving talking to you, and we're going to continue to talk some more because we want to start talking about your planner and how we really try to get our lives in order. So I want to thank you, Meico, for being on the Ed Brown Show, and we're going to talk some more, but Meico has a planner, and in our next segment, he's going to show us how we can really start to live, I want to say our best lives, but we're really going to talk about being present, being mindful, and just trying to make balance in our lives and in the lives of others. Because as you say, if we can do it ourselves, we will do it for others. And thank you. And we're going to continue talking to Meico quite soon.